Hi ladies, this is Mrs. Blaufuss here, and today we're looking at lesson 5.2. So this is writing a linear equation in slope-intercept form. It's a little different than what we did in 5.1 because in 5.1 we were given the y-intercept, and in 5.2 we are not given the y-intercept. Okay, so we're going to be given a couple points. We might be given the slope, but we'll need to put our slope and our intercept into slope-intercept form to actually write our equation of a line. So we're going to do this in 3 steps. The first step is to identify the slope. Remember that our slope is, we use the variable m to identify slope. And the second part of that is if we don't have a slope, if it's not given, then we can use the slope formula to calculate the slope if we know 2 points that are on the line. So remember the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's equal to slope. The second step of this, writing the equation, is to find the y-intercept. So sometimes it might be given, but sometimes we'll have to substitute the slope and the coordinates of a point, which are x and y, into the formula y equals mx plus b, and then we'll actually have to solve for b, which is the y-intercept. Or the third step, and then the third step is to write our equation. So once we know our slope, or m, and our y-intercept, we can write it into the form y equals mx plus b. Y and x will be in our equation. Okay, so in our equation, we will need y as y and x as x. And then m and b, those will be numerical values. So let's look at this first example. In this first example, we are not given the y-intercept. Okay, so we have to find the y-intercept. We are given the point 1, 2, and we were given the slope of 3. So this point 1, 2, that's our x and our y coordinate. The slope of 3 is our m. So we can just make a list of the things that we know so far, and we know that x is 1, y is 2, and slope is 3. Okay, so we're going to use these 3 things to plug into our slope-intercept form, which is, remember, y equals mx plus b. That's our slope-intercept form. So first we need to identify the slope. Okay, the slope is m, and m equals 3. The second step is to find the y-intercept. Now, we are not given the y-intercept. Previously, we were given a coordinate something like 0, 4, where when x was 0, y was 4, and that told us what the y-intercept was. But here, our point, our x coordinate is not 0, it's 1. Okay, so we need to do a little bit of work to find the y-intercept. So it says to find the x-intercept, substitute the slope and the coordinates of the given point into the form, into the equation y equals mx plus b, and then solve for b. So again, we know y. Okay, y is 2, so let's substitute in 2 for y. We know m. M is 3, so we're going to substitute 3 for m. And we know x. X is 1. Oops, needs a different color. X is 1, so we're going to substitute 1 in for x. So we get the equation 2 equals 3 times 1 plus b, or 2 equals 3 plus b. Now, in order to solve for b, we need to subtract 3 from both sides. And when we take 2 minus 3, we get negative 1. So b is equal to negative 1. Okay, so now that we know our slope and we know our y-intercept, we can write an equation in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form still says y equals something times x plus something. Okay, so our slope-intercept form is y equals 3 times x plus -1, which is just -1. So we still substitute 3 in for m, and now we can substitute -1 in for b. But when you write your equation, you still have to have an x and a y value. Those have to be variables. Our x and our y are variables. Our slope and our y-intercept, those are actual numerical values that we have. Okay, I want you to pause the video, and while the video is paused, with a partner or on your own, I want you to work on this checkpoint. Pause the video as long as it takes to complete the exercise, and you can unpause for the solution. Okay, our solution here starts with first using the point and the slope to find the y-intercept. Okay, so I first identified all of my variables. I know that my x value is 2 because that's the first coordinate in my coordinate pair. I know my y value is 2 because that's the second coordinate in my ordered pair. And then I know that my m is 4 because that's the given slope. So I'm going to use those and the formula y equals mx plus b to solve for b. Okay, so I substitute my y for 2, my m for 4, and my x for 2. And then from there, I can solve for b. So I get 2 equals 8 plus b. I subtract 8 from both sides, and I get -6 is equal to b. Okay, so now I know my slope, which is 4, and my y-intercept, which is -6. So I can use those to write a new linear equation in slope-intercept form. And to do this, I write y is equal to 4 times x minus 6. Okay, let's move on now to example 2. In example 2, we need to write an equation of a line that passes through these 2 points, 2, -3, and -2, 1. The first thing that we're going to need to do is to calculate slope. So remember, we have our equation for slope, y2 minus y1 equals x2 minus x1. So we're going to pick, it doesn't matter which one we choose as point 1 and point 2. I'm going to call this as point 1 just because it's first, and I'm going to call this point 2. Okay, so I know that my I know that my y2 is this point right here, and my y1 is this point right here. So in my equation, I will take 1 minus -3, 1 minus -3, divided by my x2, which is -2, minus my x1, which is +2. Okay, now I'm going to simplify this a little bit. 1 minus -3 is the same as 1 plus 3. So I have 4. -2 minus 2 is -4. So my slope is -1. So now that I have calculated my slope, I need to find the y-intercept. Now I can pick either point. It doesn't matter if I pick 2, -3 or -2, 1, because this line is going to go through both of those points. So I'm just going to choose one of those points, and I'm going to do exactly what I did in example 1. So now I have a slope and I have a point. So my slope is -1. My y coordinate is -3, and and my x-coordinate is 2. Okay, so now I can go ahead and substitute in my values. Y is -3, my slope is -1, and my x-coordinate is 2. I need to solve for my y-intercept. Okay, so I can substitute my slope value, which again I said was -1, because that's what I just found in the example above. I found my slope. I can substitute 2 in for x, because that's the coordinate I'm given, and I substitute -3 in for y, because again, that's the y coordinate of the ordered pair that I was given. Okay, so now I can solve for b, just like I did in the last example. So -3 is equal to -2 plus b, and I can now add 2 to both sides, and I get -1 is equal to b. Okay, now I know my slope and I know my y-intercept, so now I can write an equation. I know my slope is -1, I know my y-intercept is -1, so I can substitute -1 for slope and -1 for my y-intercept. So now when I rewrite my equation, I would have -1 times x plus a -1. I'm going to simplify that so that it makes sense when I read it. So -1 times x is just -x, plus -1 is just -1. So my equation of the line that goes through those 2 points is y equals -x minus 1. Okay, there are the next 2 checkpoints. Try them both on your own, and then when you're finished, you can get together with a partner and make any corrections that you need to, or discuss any questions that you have. So you can pause this video now, pause it while you work, and then you can unpause for the solution. Okay, here's the solution for this checkpoint problem. So the first thing that I have to do is decide which one I want to be x1 and y1, and which one I want to be x2 and y2. So I just chose this first pair as x1, y1, and the second pair as x2, y2. So I used those to calculate the slope. And when I did that, I got a slope of 5/4. Okay, my second step was to use the slope to solve for b. So I had to choose one of those points, and I just chose the second one. And the only reason I chose the second one is because I like to work with positive numbers. Okay, so I chose point 42, where 4 is the x and 2 is the y. And I'm going to use those points to plug into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b, where my m is 5/4, my y is 2, and my x is 4. So 2 equals 5/4 times 4 plus b. Okay, and when I solved for b, I got b is equal to -3. So my equation of my line is y equals 5/4 x minus 3. Okay, let's look at the second one. And in the second equation, same thing, I have to choose which one I want to be x1, y1, and which one I want to be x2, y2, and I just went in order. So the first one is x1, y1, and the second one is x2, y2. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did in the last example, is first find my slope. And when I found my slope, I got -3/2. Next, I'm going to use my slope to find b, so I can choose either point. This time I decided to choose -3, 4. I decided to choose the first point. So I know that 4 is my y-coordinate when my x-coordinate is -3. So I use my slope-intercept form. Y, which is 4, equals m, which is -3/2, times x, which is -3, plus b, which I don't know. That's what I'm solving for. Okay, so when I multiply fractions, remember you multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So I get 4 equals 9 halves plus b. So I need to move 9 halves to the other side of the equation, which means I need to subtract 9 halves from both sides. When I take 4 minus 9 halves is 4 and a half. So if I take 4 minus 4 and a half, I get negative 1 half. That's my b. And I can use that to write a new equation, because now I know slope and I know y-intercept. So my equation now is y equals negative 3 halves x minus 1 half. Okay, so today we're just going to end with this key concept. And this key concept just outlines, again, how to write equations in slope-intercept form. So if we're given the slope, m, and the y-intercept, b, we can simply just substitute, just like we did previously. So we can just substitute m and b into the equation y equals mx plus b. If we're given the slope, m, and some other point, then we can substitute m and the coordinates of the point into y equals mx plus b. But when we do that, we need to solve for b so that we can write the equation. The most complex version of this that we've covered so far is that if we're only given 2 points and one of them is not the y-intercept, then we need to use the 2 points to find the slope, which is m. Then we need to substitute m and one of the coordinate pairs, so one x coordinate and one y coordinate, into the equation y equals mx plus b. Okay, then we can solve for b, and then we can write our equation. And remember, in our equation, we will have x and y both as variables. X is the independent variable, and y is the dependent variable. So please jot down any questions you have for me, and we can go over them next time I see you in class. And then you'll have the rest of the class time to work on either your cumulative review or your 5.2 assignment. Thank you.